Welcome to the Engineer Your Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. James Bryant, and your guide to winning at work and at home. On this podcast, I have a wide variety of conversations with people, business owners, engineers, leaders, coaches, and consultants, all navigating their career and their lives in real time. And I come across people on LinkedIn reaching out to apply to be guests on the show. Today's guest came from a different path. Eli May responded to an open call for conversations that I placed in a forum on the National Society of Professional Engineers. What I appreciated about his response and about this conversation is that it reflects something that a lot of engineers experience but don't necessarily talk about openly. And that's career transitions that really aren't clean and the tension between ambition and family responsibility. So this episode is more of a reflection on how work and life interact over time and how those priorities shift as your career and your family evolve. As you listen in today, pay close attention to how decisions were made and how he considered both his career and his family. So let's get into this conversation.
Success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about living a life that reflects your values and priorities. Welcome to Engineer Your Success, the podcast that helps you lead with intention and live fulfilled.
Eli, welcome to the show.
Thanks, James. Glad to be here.
What was the first major pivot that you made?
The first major pivot was when I was working in Wichita for an aerospace company and wanted to get transferred to their office in France. And I was in a position where I could do some of that transition work and thought I was going to be able to make that transition internally. Then it became clear that I wasn't going to. So I just made the bold move to just apply for jobs directly in Europe.
What was the main driver behind you wanting to go work internationally?
I studied abroad in college, and that was a really milestone experience. Opened my eyes to the rest of the world because in the U.S. in general, we're isolated from the rest of the world's out there, and in Kansas especially, we're so far from any border. And then going to this international experience in Europe, where being forced to learn a new language by immersion, and it was just I had so much fun. It was so awesome, and I wanted that experience for my kids. So at the time, my oldest daughter had turned 5 and was going to start school, and I thought it would be a lot more difficult to make an international move like that after she was in school and we were entrenched where we are. So that was my motivator at that time. That kind of was like the time pressure
Yeah.
that may or may not have been real, but that was a big motivator for me.
And
Transition.
yeah, and how did that play with your wife and your family? Because you're not making this transition or jump alone.
I really wanted to go international after graduation and had gotten that buy-in up front when I started dating my now wife, and through that entire process. And I think that's a key point. You can have these goals and visions for your career, but then if you don't have buy-in, it's people at home aren't happy and you're not happy and it's not what you want. She had also spent time overseas and had lived for a month in Uganda in college, for example. And we're weird like that.
No, I wouldn't say that you're weird like that, but you both had a desire to work internationally. So, Eli, what were some of the biggest differences that you noticed between working as an engineer in US versus internationally?
The biggest one was that you're an immigrant and you in the Airbus system, especially in aerospace in general, there's a heavy use of contract labor. They mainly have the management and leadership positions direct hire, and everyone else is contract position. And it's a lot harder to get to the direct hire positions if you're an immigrant. So it was a lot different than in the U.S. when I was on the other side as a U.S. citizen working with Indian or Russian subcontractors. And being on the other side of that was probably the bigger transition, different responsibility levels, different expectations. And I think that was humbling, but in a good way. It helped me to obviously empathize more with the people in that situation. And that was probably the biggest thing that I didn't expect, because going as a professional with several years experience.
If there's somebody that's listening to this and they want to make a shift or a move, what are some pointers or tips that you would have for them?
And if I was going to recommend to someone else, it is don't be afraid of failure. It's not probably an advisable move if you want to be a rock star in your career and get to the top fast and win the rat race, because you're essentially starting over in some ways at the bottom of the totem pole. But the experience that I gained doing that gave me so much more broad range of experience dealing with different situations, and helped me to empathize with a lot of those other kinds of things that I wouldn't have done or been exposed to.
You've pivoted from doing more engineering design related work into sales. And so, how has that transition been for you?
I'm always wanting to learn more things and do different things. And that was something where I felt like I had reached all that I could reach, and it had been 5 years in my position with the company in design. And it was a down cycle, so there was less for us to do. And I was getting a little restless professionally. And they had a posting for sales. And I thought that sounded like a really cool thing to be able to do, not just be live and breathe design, but also to convey that design to customers and above all internally to the sales team, so that they could be more informed. And that was also transitioning from working primarily in German to working in English internationally with all the international sales teams. And I felt like it was a better use of my language skills for the company. I really loved being a communicator instead of just boots on the ground doer. Since then, there's been the pandemic, and I've come back to Kansas, and I've gone in a different direction. But where I was there and where that was heading, it was a lot of fun.
So, what are you currently doing now?
My main goal there was to come back home, be close to family, get back to my roots. But moving home meant I had to look and see where can I add value, and that ended up being in civil engineering. I had done structural work that transitioned well into bridge design. So I've been able to help and cross train into a lot of the pure civil engineering stuff. That's what I'm doing now, primarily bridge design, but also creating earthwork and parking lot design.
How are you leveraging the skills that you developed while you were overseas in your current role?
Yeah, great question. I think it's again looking at what do I have that we're not using. And I've been through the initial period of several months to a year where I'm just learning. And now I'm trying to leverage that knowledge in this position. And how do I use my experience for my personal growth, but also the growth of the company? In a smaller consulting company, it's more based on what people know how to do as far as what work we go after. We did have a project for Overland Park where they had a sister city in Germany. They wanted to do a German style park. So I was able to help out in our design team here to help them know what's German or not. And I had a few contributions to that project.
If you could give yourself as a younger engineer one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't worry about career development in the rat race and be, yeah, because there was a point in my career where I felt like I was constantly starting over and not just staying put, and couldn't be boring and stay put and climb the ranks. And that stems from working for people younger than myself that had a job that I would like to have had, but
Mm.
they had just taken the right degree or gotten the right internship and were on the fast track. And I was like, I wish I had been on the fast track for that. And now, after having gone through it all, my advice to someone like myself would be, don't worry about that. You don't have to be the young rock star that makes advances quickly. There's a lot of value to the age and building a base.
The approach that you took, you built a lot of adaptability into what you were doing. And I think that's absolutely great. Whether you are constantly changing your career every few years or whether you're building your tower vertically, you can still fall into the trap of that I'm doing it all for them. So all of the work, everything that I'm doing it for them. And we rationalize why we're making the choices that we're making. When if we were to be honest with ourselves, there's a part of us that likes doing what we're doing and we get joy out of it. And so what I talk about a lot at Engineer Your Success is designing and living a life where you're winning at work and at home. It's not an either or, but you can achieve both.
Fundamentally, I want to make my world a better place, and making my world a better place includes my family and those around me. And you have, like, at times in my career, I've been achieving that from my job. And then I really get excited about it and work 50 hours a week or whatever. And at other times, I've just had a job to pay the bills and was really focusing on what can I do to make my world better at home. And then work was supporting that. And you have those times where one supports the other. They both have to mesh and work. You have to have buy-in. You have to have
you do.
family that's okay with you working those hours, meeting obligations at home, and those relationships, tending to them and maintaining those. And on the other hand, if your job is just there to fund your home life, then you have to have a job that works with that.
So it sounds like you pulled your family into the decision-making process. And I think that's key. Even if it's not a big decision, let's say that you've been spending hours upon hours at work and now you want to start investing more time at home. Yes, you have to do it with your actions, but I would also do it with your words to let your family know what you're working on, what you're trying to accomplish. This is why you're going to be spending more time doing X, Y, Z, because they can help hold you accountable as well. Eli, we're going to be wrapping up this interview. If someone has listened to this, then maybe they have some questions about baking pivots. What's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, right now, LinkedIn, I think it works generally well to send a DM.
We'll have a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. So you've been gracious enough. You've allowed me to ask questions. You've answered questions. Now it's time to flip the script and you get to be the interviewer. I get to be the interviewee. What's your question?
You've transitioned from civil engineering and now you're doing training and teaching. How did you make that transition? What pointers would you give to someone wanting to be more in the teaching mode?
For me, the transition, it wasn't necessarily easy, but it revealed itself to me pretty clearly. So I was working, the pandemic hits, you have time for a reset. Everything's changing at work. We're doing more Zoom calls. Everything's more remote. But what I did notice is I got much more excited about doing coaching and mentoring and consulting type work or projects than I was doing more of my day job type projects. And as that began to pull me away, it was more like, here's what I'm transitioning to versus here's what I'm leaving or transitioning from. So I wanted to be challenged in a situation where I had to give everything that I had. And for me, entrepreneurship and starting Engineer Success, doing executive coaching, facilitation, leadership development, and even building the podcast and the podcasting services that we provide are all things that push me beyond my normal comfort zone. Eli, I really enjoyed our conversation and I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast. Hi, this is James, the coach in your corner. You may notice that this is going to be a different closing than the many people know what to do take that I've been using since we started the podcast. I want to replace that with this Coach in Your Corner segment. One practical thing that stood out to me in this conversation is how Eli consistently talked about bringing his family into decisions that he was making. He wasn't making career decisions in a vacuum. This kind of open communication really helps the people around you understand what's going on, and it gives them the opportunity to help hold you accountable. So that is one simple and practical example that you can use that will help you win at work and at home. Okay, I want you to be great this week. Thanks.